Good morning, guys. Hey, wanted to give a quick little explanation for those living in Missouri. So if you don't live in Missouri, you can pretty much tune out because this won't apply to you whatsoever. But I know I always get calls right before elections from, my phone starts ringing nonstop, starting from about a week ago until Election Day, of people asking me who to vote for, which judges to vote for, how to vote on the amendments and the propositions, and especially the amendments and propositions are the main ones that I get calls on. Get a lot of calls on judges, not as many of those. My normal philosophy is get them all out of there and get some new ones in. But with the amendments and propositions, they can be very confusing to people who don't follow politics. A lot of times they'll have some very smooth language, especially if you drive around the state and you see billboards and you see some of these ads, and sometimes they get very creative on the way they describe. So I wanted to go through a real quick explanation of Amendment 3 because this is critically important for anyone living in the state of Missouri to understand. What Amendment 3 is basically cleaning up the problems from a amendment that passed a few years ago known as Clean Missouri, which was anything but clean. It created just some huge problems and is about ready to create some mega problems if Amendment 3 doesn't pass. This is right now the way it looks in the state of... I apologize for my artwork here. I definitely did not do well in school in art. But this is supposed to resemble the state of Missouri. And these are the congressional districts the way they are at the federal level. Now, this also affects the state level legislature as well, but especially at the federal level. Right now, these are the districts. You see Lacey Clay's district, District 1, which is basically the city of St. Louis. Then Ann Wagner that covers the suburbs. Then you've got Blaine Luetkemeyer that covers St. Charles and more of those areas out there. Then you've got Jason Smith down in St. Genevieve, Cape Girardeau area, the Boot Hill. Then you got Billy Long down in the Springfield, the Branson area. You've got Vicki Hartzler that covers a lot of the farm community. You've got Emmanuel Cleaver that covers Kansas City. And you got Sam Graves that covers all the farming community across the north. If Amendment 3 doesn't pass, what is set to happen in the state of Missouri is the biggest gerrymandering you could ever imagine. Gerrymandering became famous because of Elbridge Gerry, who unfortunately a lot of this is not taught in schools nowadays. As a matter of fact, I would wager to say there's probably not a public school student who learned who Elbridge Gerry was, which is really a shame. He was the 5th Vice President of the United States. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a signer of the Articles of Confederation. And he was one of only 3 people who attended the Constitutional Convention but refused to sign the U.S. Constitution until the Bill of Rights was passed. But a very, very famous person, but he became more famous as governor of Massachusetts when he rigged a district to make it look like a salamander to be able to win an election. But basically, that's what's about ready to happen if Amendment does not pass, if Amendment 3 doesn't pass. Because right now, this is what the districts look like. And there's never going to be a perfect situation. But this is as close as you get, because in the cities, you've got Kansas City and St. Louis, which are primarily blue districts, represented by Lacey Clay currently, although he lost his election, so he'll be going out. And then you've got Emmanuel Cleaver representing Kansas City. Now, Kansas City and St. Louis have very different needs for their constituents than a farming type community like a Sam Graves district or a Billy Long or especially Vicki Hartzler's district. So when they're representing their constituents, Sam Graves is thinking more of the farming community, as is Vicki Hartzler. Emmanuel Cleaver and Lacey Clay aren't as concerned about farming issues because that doesn't represent their districts. If Amendment 3 does not pass because of this devastating Clean Missouri that passed, says that every district has to be closely equal in Republicans and Democrats. So they are going to redraw the districts to try and make them equal. Well, in the state of Missouri, there's a high concentration of Democrats in the city of St. Louis and very high concentration in the city of Kansas City. not as many Democrats as you drive around. Anybody who's driven around and seen all the Trump signs, especially in the Branson area down there, you'll realize there's two real big clusters. Well, what Clean Missouri did says that if Amendment 3 doesn't pass, they are going to have to gerrymander these districts, which means they're going to have to carve a section of the Democrats out here and shoot them out for the northern district. And then there's going to be another small section here that's going to go like this. Then there's going to be another small section of the city voters going down here. And then another section here, and the same thing is going to happen with Kansas City. So you're going to end up with districts that look something like this. Well, the challenge with that is, what happens if you get a U.S. member of Congress elected in Kansas City or St. Louis, and you live in one of these areas here, and your member of U.S. Congress is in the city of St. Louis, and you live on a 1,000-acre farm? How much representation do you think you're going to get from somebody living in downtown St. Louis to represent you in a farming community? How much representation, say the reverse, suppose you get somebody who gets elected who lives on a farm, who rarely goes to the city. How much representation do you think a farmer is going to give to people who live in those communities? Now, our current situation isn't perfect, but I'll tell you what, even though I disagree many times with Emanuel Cleaver, I will tip my hat to him. He does a very good job representing his constituents in his area. I've met with him. I've met with his chief of staff many times, and I can tell you, that staff, they're very near and dear to their heart of representing their constituents of what can we do for our constituents that live in the city of Kansas City. And the same thing with Lacey Clay. The same thing with Vicki Hartzler. She's very concerned about farmers. I can promise you this, not in any way putting Emanuel Cleaver down or Lacey Clay or Cory Booker, oh my gosh, I just forgot the lady just got elected to replace Clay. But they're not going to be real concerned about farmers. It's just not their area. So it is absolutely critical that we pass Amendment 3. If we don't, this is what we're going to end up with. And it just does not make sense to have a district that part of that district is St. Louis, and that exact same district also covers St. Joe, Missouri, or all the northern farmland in Missouri up around Shelbina and Macon and Cahokia, and to have their representative living in the city of St. Louis, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I just strongly encourage you, if you live in the state of Missouri, this is absolutely critical that Amendment 3 passes if you want representation from someone who can represent your needs living in your area, instead of having a representative from all the way across the state just because we had to try and get semi-equal. I'll tell you what, if you live in a Democrat community, you better hope you have a Democrat representing you. If you live in a Republican community, you better hope you have a Republican representing you. That is the silliest darn thing in the world, to gerrymander these districts and say, no, we're going to force these districts to be semi-equal. One of you is going to win and one of you is going to lose in that. Either you're going to have a Democrat from the city representing a farmer, or a farmer representing the city. Neither one of which is good for anyone in Missouri. And the same thing's going to happen at the state levels when they break down all the state Senate races and state legislatures. So just really critical. I strongly encourage you, vote yes on Amendment 3 on November 3rd. I'll probably be doing a few more of these. Also, I just strongly encourage you, for those of you, I think most of you following my page, tend to think like I do. I'm always amazed too. Every once in a while, I'll put someone who's an acquaintance on my page. And normally my page is people I went to school with. People, I've served on a lot of board of directors of different civic and organizations. And I have a lot of personal friends in St. Louis. And that's sort of what my Facebook page is for friends. And every once in a while, I'll invite someone who's an acquaintance to be a friend, and they start harassing all people I know on a regular basis. I give the analogy, if you went to someone else's party as a guest, and you didn't know a lot of people at that party, that's probably not the party to be walking around sharing your political beliefs and harassing people and stuff like that. You're a guest in someone else's house. Now, there's a different thing. If you go to a party with a bunch of your best friends, and these are people you see every day, you get in arguments all the time with those people. But if you're a guest at someone else's house, you don't do that. I'm always amazed at people who are acquaintances of mine who I've only met once in my life that I add as a friend on here, and they start harassing my friends on my personal page. But I will be doing a few of these. But for those of you that believe like me, a couple of critical races that we need your help with. One is Andrew Koenig. Andrew is one of the chief people who helped spearhead the Heartbeat Project that helped keep from killing you. Most of it just shocking to think that, if you kill the egg of a sea turtle, you can be fined $100,000 and possibly serve a year in jail. If you kill a bald eagle's egg, you could be fined $250,000 and go to jail for a couple of years. But in many states across the country, if you kill a baby that is 8 months to term inside the womb, there's no penalty for that whatsoever. And Andrew Koenig has been a big fighter of that heartbeat bill in Missouri, strong supporter for me of shared parenting, but just a neat guy, fighting for smart business policies that are going to help encourage and foster business, but he needs your help. So if anybody can help out, we need a lot of doors knocked on. Unfortunately, his opponent has received a ton of out-of-state money. And I just tell you what, if you live in the state of Missouri, I don't care if you're in his Senate district or not, every Senate district in the state of Missouri casts an equal vote. So whether he's your state senator or not, that's going to affect everything in our state for the next 4 years. And I don't want out-of-state money influencing someone to determine how the laws are going to go in the state of Missouri. So if you can help out with Andrew, we need a lot of people helping knocking on doors. Please send me a private message if you can help out. Jim Murphy, the David Lenahan. There's a lot of races that are pretty close in the St. Louis area. So if you can help out, knocking on doors, even if it's just 2 hours between now and November 3rd, or if you can help out being a poll watcher for any of these people on November 3rd, we definitely need your help then. But I strongly encourage you, get educated on these type of things before you go to the polls. So many times people just show up at a poll and they see some fancy billboard somewhere and they say, I'm going to vote for that. No, you need to be educated on what is Amendment 3 and how is that going to affect you over the next 10 years, because this will affect you for 10 years and actually probably a lot longer than that with some of the laws that are going to be passed over the next 10 years. So thanks again, guys. Send me a private message if you're willing to help out with any of these campaigns, and I'm sure I'll be doing more of these between now and November 3rd. Thanks, guys.